Akash Inti, the real reflection of you. Today I've been doing like a world record of being on the computer. And candidly, it's probably not a real world record, right? It's not like I'm an Olympic athlete, like typing away at the computer. But what I mean by that is that it's more that I've been on the computer than I have in quite some time, which just pluses and minuses to it. It's simply an observation. But what I have observed is that when I'm on the computer for long periods of time, there'll be long stretches of time, probably 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, where I'm really breathing shallow, right? It's just kind of up here. And sometimes I'm really just like, and I won't notice it, right? I'm not like very conscious of it in the moment because when I'm working on something on the computer, what I'm focusing on is whatever I'm working on the computer. I'm not really focused on my breathing. But at the same time, I've also realized that if I really want to continue to make headways and like figuring out whatever the issue, the solution, whatever on the computer, I need to be breathing a lot, right? And so it's interesting because one of the things I'm just observing about this, I'm observing this about myself in real time, is that I want to make headways in something, right? Like computer work, great example. Like I want to make headways on a particular project or make something happen or whatever. And what I'm realizing right this second is that just by like wanting to do it doesn't really, it's like, it's not just going to happen, right? It's like, obviously there's time. That's not the real revelation. The revelation to me is there's like a certain amount of breaths that it actually takes. And what I mean by that actually is like, the deeper that I breathe, and this is just, I'm working this out for myself right now, but the deeper that I breathe, the more awareness and attention that I have for a particular, like topic or whatever, right? Great example, when I'm meditating. When I meditate, my breath tends to be much deeper than when I am not meditating. I would say on average, if I looked at the depth, or if you want to really get scientific about this, the average volume of oxygen or even air, right, that I intake is going to be higher when I meditate than when I'm not meditating on average. All right, cool. That's just a hypothesis. Obviously, I would have to run a test to actually see if that's true or not to support this whole argument and thesis. But I'm not writing a PhD dissertation on this. I'm simply just playing around right now, right? But the depth of, so the more that I breathe, the deeper that I breathe, the more awareness that I have to be able to solve a solution, a problem, etc. Which is really interesting to me because more often than not, what ends up happening is that I end up like almost cutting off the breath and I just keep breathing really shallow and like, and it's not going to be like that exactly, but it's just very shallow breathing. It's not deep breathing. So while it seems like there's some awareness in terms of whatever I'm solving, and maybe in the short term, I'm able to get like a half second farther, in the longer term, I'm not really able to make things happen. And now obviously there's a trade-off, right? It's like, well, I can't put all my attention on my breath if I'm trying to figure out this thing on the computer. And yet at the same time, I can't figure out the thing on the computer if I'm trying to put all my attention on my breath, right? Like there's just those two things, it would seem, are mutually like they're incompatible, right? And I'm thinking that's actually not true. And so yeah, I don't even know why that like, it's like, oh, this is a huge revelation. But I'm just sharing that to myself, right? Because to bring more awareness to like, dude, just breathe more when you're working on the computer. But then also I'll notice like when I don't do that, like I'll notice like the tension that kind of accrues with it, right? It'll be maybe my wrists start getting they start bugging me a little bit, or my fingers, or maybe my back starts hurting a little bit more or whatever. And probably a part of that is also attributed to how much did I move around, right? Movement is really, really important. I almost think that you need to do, this is just, again, hypothesis. I almost think like before working on a computer, it's like, all right, you got to do some exercise before you get, and I'm not saying like, all right, you got to run a marathon before getting on your computer for the day. It's like, no, just like even 15 minutes of stretching prior to it for working for maybe, I don't know, about an hour, and then 5 minutes post, right? I don't know. I haven't worked out the exact numbers on it, and I haven't tried this yet, and this is just me messing around with things, like observing things. This is all part of my process. But yeah, so that's an observation. But I talk about all of this because I just notice, like, especially if I'm doing that type of work, which it feels like most of us, and I speak about us as in human beings, There seems to be this whole like thing towards moving towards technology. It could be phones, it could be tablets, it could be laptops, it could be desktops, it could be whatever you want to call them. But some type of electronic device where it's like, okay, there's a screen and you interact with the screen. Yeah, it's really cool. It can visualize things and help you figure things out. And yet at the same time, it's just a screen, right? But it's our way of communicating, and it's our way of getting things done in today's day and age, which is really cool. I mean, candidly, I think it's absolutely awesome. I wouldn't even be making this video otherwise, right? Like, technology definitely has its place. So where am I going with all this? Well, one is a reminder to stay organic. Computers are very non-organic, right? I mean, computers aren't, so whatever, I studied biotech and I love biotech. I still do. And one of the things that I've always been fascinated by is like understanding like how is life so efficient? Because I really do believe life is the most efficient, not only economic system, but and people might be like, oh, you think life is a very efficient economic system? It's like, yeah, I really do. But the other part is that I think that life is very efficient as it relates to just everything, right? I think life is the most efficient machine, right? I think, I don't know, I think biotechnology, blah, blah, blah. I think biology is more efficient than any machine, right? You heard it first here, folks. And people might be like, oh, I don't know about that. No. What about this? What about that? What about AI? And I'll, to them, I say, well, I think it's even, or people would be like, oh, what about quantum computing? I'll be like, for me, I think life is even more efficient than all of that, right? And it depends. Efficient for what, right? It's like, all right, well, whatever. I digress, right? But the reminder being, stay organic. Stay in the process of focusing on one thing and then focusing on the other thing and then focusing on a third thing, and just not being so married to, oh, I gotta get this one thing done, and if I don't get this one thing done, well, that's the end of the world, right? It's like, all right, well, chill, dude. Like, there's a lot of other things going on too. And more often than not, what I end up finding out is that whatever I'm like, oh man, I gotta get this one thing done. If I'm like so focused on that, more often than not, it almost like doesn't happen to some degree because I'm so focused on that one thing versus like, okay, well, I'll do a little bit of this, I'll do a little bit of that, I'll do a little bit of this, I'll do a little bit of that. And then that through time, it ends up like, it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Right? And you might be like, you're talking so vague right now. And it's making a lot of sense to me though right now. So it is what it is. But anyways, I leave it pretty much here because I think that's my sign to finish leaving it here. I like this little sombrero, which is why I'm wearing it. I also, more than anything, what I really like actually on this one is like that curve, right? One of the things that I've noticed is that specifically for men, asymmetry is like very, in my opinion, I think it's a very attractive look, right? So this is a very asymmetrical hat, and it's an old hat. You can see there's a little hole in it. This is the type of thing, a lot of my clothes or whatever, I end up finding that like either give them away or I'd lose them or whatever. maybe not lose them, but they get misplaced largely because I give it away. I'm just not really attached to them. So this is one of those pieces. So at this point, I've talked way too longer than I really wanted to, but I wouldn't really have like a set, like, okay, I really want to talk this long today. This hat's also giving me a lot of ideas, right? I can like, I don't know, do something like this and then put like a little feather there or whatever. I just think it's kind of cool. Maybe when I design a hat business, you guys can check it out. Anyways, keep up, thrive, stay sexy.